My son once begged me for $100,000. I said no, because love doesn't mean blind trust. 2 days later, his wife smiled as she handed me coffee. And that was the day I almost didn't live to tell this story. That betrayal lit a fire in me I never thought I had. Hello, everyone. My name is June Whitaker, and before I tell you what happened to me, I want to know something. Where are you watching from? Are you in your kitchen, maybe drinking your own morning coffee? Or sitting somewhere quiet, wondering how love can turn into something sharp and dangerous without you even noticing? Wherever you are, I want you to hear this as a warning wrapped in truth. It started, as most heartbreaks do, with good intentions. My son, Eric, came to see me one chilly Thursday morning. The sky was heavy and gray, and the wind kept rattling the branches against my kitchen window like it was trying to say something I couldn't quite understand. He brought his wife, Nina, with him, polished as always, wearing that calm, practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. I remember thinking how much she reminded me of the porcelain teacups in my cabinet. Beautiful, delicate, but liable to crack if you tapped them the wrong way. They sat across from me at the kitchen table. Eric's fingers drummed restlessly on the wood. He didn't even touch the muffin I'd baked that morning, his favorite, blueberry with a hint of lemon zest. "Mom," he said, his voice trembling with excitement and something else. Desperation, maybe. "I have a big idea. It's not just some side project. It's a real opportunity, a startup, software, logistics, sustainability, everything people are investing in right now." I smiled softly. I'd heard similar words before, though not strung together with such hope. "Tell me about it," I said, though a small part of me already knew where this was going. He launched into it, eyes glowing like they did when he was a boy, talking about his first science fair project. Only this time, it wasn't about curiosity. It was about money. "It's just the beginning phase," he said, glancing briefly at Nina. "We only need some seed capital to get things moving. Around $100,000 should cover setup, hiring, and initial marketing. I'll pay you back, double, even triple." $100,000. I kept my face still, but inside something sank. That was nearly all I had left from the house my husband and I sold before he passed. My retirement cushion, the thing that let me sleep at night without fear of being a burden to anyone. Nina reached out and placed her manicured hand over his. "It's a sure thing, June. Eric's got everything lined up. You'd be investing in your son's future." Her voice was sweet, careful, a performance rehearsed down to the last breath. I stirred my tea. The spoon clinked against the cup like a tiny bell tolling in my head. "Eric," I said slowly, "what happened to the last idea? The photography venture? The app for used furniture exchange?" He looked away. "Those were different. This one's serious." I sighed. "And the $30,000 I lent you for the first one? I never saw that again." Silence. The kind that stretches until it starts to hurt. Nina's eyes hardened for a fraction of a second before she forced another smile. "He's learned from that, haven't you, honey?" He nodded barely. I reached across the table, touched his hand. "Eric, I love you. You're my son. But no, I can't give you that money." The words landed between us like cold stones. For a moment he just stared at me. Then he pulled his hand back and leaned away, shoulders stiffening. "You don't believe in me," he said quietly. "That's not true," I whispered. "I believe in you. I just don't believe this is the right way." He stood up abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. "You'll regret this, Eric." But he was already heading for the door. Nina lingered. Her eyes softened in a way that almost fooled me. "He's just hurt," she murmured. "You know how much your opinion means to him." "I know," I said, forcing a smile. "Give him time." She nodded, lips curling into something that looked like sympathy but felt like warning. "Of course," she said. "And June, don't worry, I'll take good care of him." When the door closed behind them, the house fell silent, too silent. I sat there, staring at the untouched muffin and the cup of tea that had gone cold. The wind rattled again, harder this time, like it was trying to get in. Something in my chest twisted. I told myself it was guilt. But looking back now, I realize it was the first stir of fear. That was the day I said no to my son. I didn't know it then, but it was also the day I signed the invisible line between love and survival. 2 days passed, 2 long, hollow days filled with the kind of silence that presses down on your chest until you start questioning whether you did the right thing. Eric didn't call. Not a text, not even a curt, "Good morning." That hurt more than I expected it to. I tried to keep busy, organizing my spice drawer, trimming the rose bushes, baking bread I didn't even want to eat, but every quiet moment circled back to him. He was my only child, my reason for so many of the sacrifices I'd made since his father died. I'd worked double shifts, skipped vacations, and stretched every dollar, all so he could have the life we never did. So yes, saying no to him felt like a betrayal of motherhood itself. That Sunday, guilt got the better of me. I told myself I'd go over to clear the air, not to apologize. But when it comes to our children, the line between love and surrender blurs easily, doesn't it? Their house sat on the far edge of town, newer and shinier than mine. I'd helped with the down payment 3 years earlier, believing it was a foundation for their future. Now, standing outside, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd helped build a stranger's home. When Nina opened the door, her surprise was expertly masked. "Oh, June, what a lovely surprise," she sang, every syllable dipped in honey. Her eyes flickered for just a moment before she stepped aside. "Come in, please. Eric's just upstairs taking a call." The living room smelled faintly of vanilla and something stronger underneath, like bleach. Everything was spotless, unnervingly so. I set the basket of muffins on the counter. "I didn't mean to intrude," I said softly. "I just wanted to check in. Things felt tense the other day." Nina smiled that porcelain smile again. "It's sweet of you to come. He's been under a lot of stress. You know how he gets. Wants to fix everything at once." Her tone was gentle, but the words carried a sting. "You know how he gets," as if I'd raised him to be flawed. She motioned toward the table. "Sit, I'll make coffee. You still like yours with 1 sugar, right?" I nodded, a small part of me touched by the familiarity. "You remember?" "Of course," she said, turning her back. The kettle hissed. She hummed as she worked, a tune I didn't recognize. I watched her carefully, every movement slow, deliberate. She poured, stirred, smiled, but there was a cold precision to her gestures that made something in me tighten. When she placed the mug in front of me, a faintly sweet chemical smell floated up. Not strong, just off, like almonds and metal. I blinked. "That's a new blend?" Nina's smile didn't waver. "A special roast I ordered online, supposed to have notes of cherry." She sat across from me, sipping her own cup. Before I could respond, the front door opened and an older woman stepped in, wrapped in a thick gray scarf. Nina's mother, Doreen if I remembered right. She'd always been warm, chatty, the kind who hugged too tightly. Today, she looked pale, tired. "Oh, Mom, I didn't know you were coming this early," Nina said, her tone too sharp for comfort. "I was nearby," Doreen murmured, setting her purse down. "I thought I'd stop in to see my daughter and son-in-law." "Perfect timing," I said politely. "We were just having coffee, Nina hesitated, barely a flicker, then forced a cheerful laugh. "Yes, here, let me get you a cup." As she turned to the counter, I noticed her hand tremble just slightly while she reached for the mugs. When she came back, she mixed them quickly, almost too quickly, and handed one to Doreen, another to me. The smell hit me again, that strange sweetness. I glanced at my cup, then at Doreen's, and something in my gut screamed, "Don't." So while Nina's back was turned, adjusting the sugar jar, I switched the cups. Just like that, quiet, quick, instinctive. The move of a mother who's seen enough of life to trust her intuition over her politeness. We sat. We talked. 5 minutes later, Doreen's face went white. She clutched her stomach. "Doreen," I said, standing up. Her hand shook as the cup slipped from her grasp, shattering on the tile. The smell of coffee and something acrid filled the room. She gasped, then collapsed sideways onto the floor. Nina screamed, too loud, too perfectly timed. "Mom! Oh my God, Mom!" Eric came running down the stairs, phone still in hand. "What happened?" I stood frozen, staring at the spilled coffee spreading across the tiles like a stain that would never come out. "It was the coffee," I whispered. Doreen's breaths were shallow, uneven. Eric knelt beside her, shouting for Nina to call 911. She fumbled with her phone, tears streaming down her face, but not one reached her eyes. In the chaos, I caught a flicker of something in her expression. Not fear, not grief, annoyance, like a plan had gone wrong. That night, after the ambulance took Doreen away, I sat alone in my car for a long time. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The faint smell of coffee still clung to my skin, and I couldn't help thinking, if I hadn't switched those cups, it would have been me on that floor. And in that moment, the truth began to simmer, dark and undeniable. This wasn't just a family disagreement anymore. Something much darker had started to brew. The ambulance lights flickered red and blue across Nina's pristine white walls, painting the room like a crime scene. I stood on the porch, shivering though the night was mild. The paramedics moved fast. IV lines, oxygen mask, steady commands. But Doreen's body looked so small on that stretcher, too small for the noise and panic surrounding her. When they drove away, Eric finally turned to me. His face was pale, eyes darting between me and Nina. "What happened?" he demanded. "Mom, what did you do?" The words struck like a slap. "What I did," I said, stunned. "Eric, I didn't. She just collapsed." Nina rushed to his side, clutching his arm. "She drank coffee your mother made, June. Maybe something was wrong with it?" Her voice trembled beautifully, as if she'd practiced this moment her whole life. I felt my stomach twist. "Nina, you made the coffee." She blinked, innocent. I helped, sure, but maybe I mixed up the mugs or..." Her sentence faltered under my stare. Eric looked between us, confusion clouding his face. "Please," I whispered, fighting the tremor in my voice, "just go with her to the hospital. She needs you." Hours later, I sat in my car outside the emergency ward. The smell of antiseptic hung heavy in the air every time the doors slid open. I watched through the glass as nurses moved in and out, faceless and quick, like the night itself had work to do. I didn't go in. I couldn't. My mind was spinning too fast, replaying every second of that morning. The smell, the switch, the fall. I should have been dead. That thought landed with such clarity it made my chest ache. If I hadn't switched the cups, it would have been me in that hospital bed. The next morning, my phone rang. "Eric." His voice was hoarse. "Mom, she's stable now. They said it was poisoning." My throat went dry. "Poisoning?" "They found something in her system. Ethylene glycol. From antifreeze, I think. But they're saying it could have been accidental. Maybe something from cleaning supplies got in the coffee pot." I closed my eyes. "Antifreeze doesn't just slip into a coffee maker." He didn't respond. "Eric," I said quietly, "where's Nina?" "She's here. She's shaken up. I'll come by." No, maybe give it a day," he said too quickly. "We need some time." That tone, protective, defensive, hit me harder than any argument could. My own son pulling away, guarding someone else. By the time the police came asking questions, I was ready. The detective was polite, measured. "Mrs. Whitaker, you were there when the incident occurred?" "Yes." "Did you prepare the drinks?" "No," I said. "Nina did." He jotted something down. "Did you notice anything unusual?" I hesitated. The smell. It was faint, but it didn't seem right. He nodded slowly. "We're running toxicology. For now, it's being treated as accidental ingestion, but we'll need to speak with all parties again." "Of course," I said, though my heart pounded. Accidental. That word tasted like denial. Over the next few days, my phone filled with half-hearted texts from Eric, still waiting on updates. "She's okay." "Nina's exhausted." Not one. "How are you, Mom?" I tried to stay busy again. Cleaning, cooking, reading, anything to outrun the creeping thought that maybe my son wasn't as blind as I wanted to believe. Maybe he knew something. Maybe he was protecting her not out of love, but out of guilt. That night, I couldn't sleep. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out my late husband's photo. "Harold," I whispered, tracing his smile. "I think our boy's in trouble, and I think the woman he married might be the reason." 2 days later, Eric called again. His voice different this time, strained. "They questioned us again," he said. "The police think it's strange, but Nina told them it must have been an accident. You believe that, right, Mom?" I took a breath. "No," I said softly. "I don't." There was silence on the line, then a sharp exhale. "You always think the worst of her. I think what the facts show me." "And what's that?" "That she's dangerous," I said, "and that you're not seeing it." He hung up. That night, I sat by the window, watching the streetlights bleed through the fog. My reflection looked older, harder. I'd spent a lifetime believing that love meant forgiveness, that if you gave enough, you could fix anything. But love, when twisted by desperation, can rot faster than any poison. And as I looked out into the dark, I made myself a quiet promise. If Nina had truly meant to kill me, I'd find out how. And why? Because if I didn't, no one else would. By the end of that week, something inside me had shifted. Fear had given way to a steady, simmering calm, the kind that comes right before you finally do something you never thought you'd have to. I told myself I was just going to check on Eric, nothing more. But deep down, I already knew I was walking into his house looking for answers. The morning was cold and bright when I drove across town, a thin mist rising from the fields. I brought a casserole, something harmless, ordinary, and told myself it would be an excuse if anyone questioned why I was there. But the truth? I didn't want an excuse. I wanted the truth. When I knocked, no one answered. I waited, then peeked through the front window. The curtains were half drawn. The house looked still, untouched. I tried the door unlocked. Old habits. Eric never remembered to lock up. I stepped inside quietly. The air was stale, faintly chemical. Boxes on the counter, dishes in the sink, the kind of mess made by people pretending they're holding it together. I set the casserole down and looked around. The dining table had papers scattered across it, bills, printouts, folders. I told myself I shouldn't snoop, that it wasn't right. But the memory of Doreen collapsing flashed behind my eyes like a warning flare. Right and wrong had blurred a long time ago. So I started reading. Credit card statements, loans, late notices. Then a manila folder, Whitaker Life Policy, my name printed neatly across the top. I froze. My hands trembled as I opened it. There, in black and white, was a life insurance policy under my name, a large one, and listed under beneficiaries, Eric and Nina Whitaker. I felt the blood drain from my face. I scanned down the document, heart pounding. The signature at the bottom, shaky, uneven, looked like mine, but it wasn't. It was close enough to pass a glance, close enough for someone who knew my handwriting well. The edges of my vision blurred. My breath came in short bursts. How long had this been in motion? How many lies had been built to lead to that one signature? I turned the page, looking for any hint of sanity, and found more. Bank transfer requests, loan applications with my information attached, debts I'd never taken. I sat down before my knees gave out. "Mom?" His voice came from behind me, startled, uncertain. I looked up. Eric stood in the doorway wearing the same sweatshirt he'd had since college. For a second, I almost forgot everything and saw my little boy again, the one who'd run into my arms after his first heartbreak. But then my eyes fell back to the folder. "Did you forge my name?" I asked, my voice low, steady. He froze. His mouth opened, closed. "Mom, it's not. Answer me." He took a step closer. "It wasn't like that. We were desperate. I thought maybe what?" I cut in. "That you could make me disappear?" His face crumpled. "No. God, Mom, no. Nina said it was just temporary, that we'd cancel it after the business launched. We needed collateral for the investors, that's all. I didn't know she'd—" He broke off, choking on his own words. "Didn't know she'd what?" I asked, the air between us turning sharp. He sank into a chair. "She said if you refused to help, she had another way." The silence that followed was heavy, almost physical. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the faint ticking of the wall clock, the sound of my own pulse roaring in my ears. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him, demand how the boy I raised, the boy who used to run barefoot through our backyard, could sit there and confess this so quietly. Instead, I said, "You let her plan this." Tears welled in his eyes. "I didn't think she'd go through with it. I swear. She said it would look like an accident, that she'd take care of everything, and I didn't know she meant poison," I whispered. He buried his face in his hands. In that moment, I felt something inside me break, but not in the way heartbreak used to. It wasn't fragility this time. It was finality. I stood, gathered the folder, and looked down at him. "You need to decide if you're going to keep covering for her," I said, "because I'm done pretending I don't see what's right in front of me." He looked up, tears streaking down his face. "Mom, please." "No," I said, voice steady. "You chose her. Now I choose me." I turned and walked out, closing the door behind me. In the quiet that followed, I realized something terrifyingly clear. They hadn't just betrayed me for money. They'd written me out of my own life. And that was the moment I decided if they wanted to play with silence and secrets, I'd beat them at their own game. That night, I didn't sleep. The forged papers lay on my kitchen table, lit by a single lamp. The soft hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the house. Every so often I'd look up, half expecting someone to knock on the door and take them away. But no one came. Just me, the documents, and the echo of my son's confession. I used to think that justice arrived in uniforms and courtrooms, that good people just needed to tell the truth, and the rest would take care of itself. But life doesn't work like that. Justice, I was learning, starts with a quiet decision. I will not be the victim. So I began my plan. I started by buying a small notebook, nothing fancy, just a black spiral one from the corner store. On the first page, I wrote neat letters. For the record, every detail went in. Times, dates, conversations, phone calls. When Eric had come over. When Nina had texted me. What the police had said. Every smell, every look, every word. Then I bought a secondhand camera. I took photos of the forged documents, the policy pages, the mismatched signatures. I kept digital copies on a flash drive I hid inside the hollow of an old ceramic lamp. I didn't even trust my own drawers anymore. You won't. The next morning, I made an appointment with my late husband's lawyer, Mr. Sanderson, a man so old school he still used a fountain pen. When I handed him the folder, he adjusted his glasses and frowned. "Good Lord, June," he murmured. This is serious." "I know." He flipped through each page carefully. "If this signature is indeed forged, and if she attempted to harm you—" "She did more than attempt," I said quietly. "She just missed her target." He looked up at me, eyes sharp now. "We'll handle this discreetly, but you must keep everything documented. No confrontation until we have enough to act." "I understand." He paused, softening. "I'm sorry, June. I know you love your son." "I still do," I said. "That's why I'm doing this right. Because if I let them keep going, he'll lose more than me. He'll lose himself." For the next week, I lived 2 lives. By day, I baked, gardened, and smiled at neighbors. By night, I gathered evidence, phone records, insurance statements, screenshots of Nina's social media boasts about big plans and financial freedom. I even found a message she'd sent to Eric. "She won't say yes, but it's fine. There are other ways to make sure we're covered." Each new piece of proof was another thread in the net I was weaving, slow, deliberate, invisible. And then, one afternoon, fate handed me more than I asked for. I was watering the front porch plants when Nina's car pulled up beside the curb. She stepped out, smiling that sharp little smile. "June, I thought I'd drop by. You've been quiet." I matched her smile. "Trying to stay out of trouble." "Good idea," she said, walking up the steps. "May I come in? I brought those new coffee beans we talked about." My stomach tightened, but my face didn't show it. "Of course," I said. "Let's make some together." Inside, she moved with the same precision as before. Too careful, too polished. She complimented my roses, asked about my health, commented on the weather. Every word felt like part of an audition. As she poured water into the kettle, she said softly, "Eric's been worried. He feels you don't trust us anymore." "I trust what people show me," I said evenly. Her eyes flicked toward me, sharp and calculating. "Sometimes mistrust can destroy families, you know." "Sometimes poison does that too," I said, stirring my tea. She froze for half a heartbeat before recovering. "I don't know what you mean." "Oh, I think you do." I watched her expression carefully. Behind that polished exterior, I saw something flicker. Not fear, but irritation, like a cat realizing its prey had learned to bite. Then, as she set her cup down, her phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up, and before she could grab it, I saw a preview line of a message. "Make sure she drinks it this time." The world seemed to narrow to a single heartbeat. I met her eyes. She realized I'd seen. A second passed, then she smiled. "Spam message," she said softly. "They never stop calling these days." I smiled back. "You're right, they really don't." But inside, everything locked into place. This wasn't paranoia, it was proof. After she left, I sat very still for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and called Mr. Sanderson. "It's time," I told him. "I'm done waiting." He didn't ask what that meant. He only said, "Then let's do this carefully." That night, as I filed the final notes into my black notebook, I wrote one last line. Sometimes survival isn't loud. It's silent, deliberate, and patient. And the quieter I become, the louder the truth will sound. The night I decided to confront them, the air outside was thick with the smell of rain. The house felt smaller somehow, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I invited them both for dinner, Eric and Nina. I told them I wanted to make peace, that I'd been thinking things over. Nina agreed too quickly. Eric hesitated, then said, "Maybe it's time, Mom." If only he knew. I set the table the way I used to when he was a boy. His favorite roast, candles, linen napkins folded neatly. Every detail was perfect, calm, deliberate. A peaceful battlefield. When they arrived, Nina wore a white blouse and soft perfume, too soft, too sweet. Eric brought a bottle of wine and forced a smile. "It's good to be back here." "It's good to have you," I said, meaning only half of it. We sat down, plates steaming. For a few moments it felt almost normal, the clinking of cutlery, the low hum of the rain outside. Then Nina said lightly, "I hope this means you've forgiven us." I looked up. "Forgiveness depends on confession." Her fork paused mid-air. "Excuse me?" I met her eyes, calm as still water. "You heard me." Eric sighed, setting his glass down. "Mom, please, can we not do this again?" "Eric," I said softly, "do you even know what this is?" He frowned. "You're upset about the business. I get it, okay? I shouldn't have pushed." "No," I said, "you shouldn't have lied." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through glass. He blinked. "Lied? About what?" I rose, went to the counter, and returned with a folder thick, heavy, labeled, "For the record." I placed it between them. "What's this?" Nina asked, though her tone already betrayed that she knew. "Proof," I said, "of what you've both done. The forged policy. The signatures, the texts." Eric's face went pale. Nina's stayed perfectly still. He looked between us, confused, trembling. "What policy?" I turned to him slowly. "The one your wife opened in your name. The one that would have paid out $100,000 upon my death." Eric's mouth fell open. "That's not—" I cut him off. "I have the papers. I have her messages. I even have her fingerprints on a coffee mug she handed me the morning after you asked for that money." He stared at Nina now, voice breaking. "Tell me she's lying." Nina didn't answer. She just looked down at her hands, perfectly still, as though the truth itself bored her. "Tell me, Nina," he shouted. She finally lifted her eyes, calm and cold. "I did what I had to do for us, for our future." "Our future," he said, stunned. "You tried to kill my mother." Her jaw clenched. "She wouldn't help. You wanted to start your business, didn't you? She had the money sitting there, doing nothing." Eric stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. "That money was my father's, Nina. You were supposed to respect that." "Respect doesn't feed a dream," she snapped. "You said you'd do anything to prove yourself, so I did it for you." And there it was, the truth, bare and vile, between them. I stayed seated, my voice barely above a whisper. "You used my son's desperation as your weapon. You almost made him lose everything." Nina's lips pressed tight, but her eyes darted toward the door, the reflex of the guilty. "I should call the police right now," I said. Eric's voice cracked. "Mom, please." I looked at him. "I'm not doing this to punish you, Eric. I'm doing it so you finally see what you let into your life." He sank back into his chair, head in his hands. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't." "I believe you," I said. "But believing you doesn't change what's happened." I picked up the folder, placed it beside me. "I've already given copies to my lawyer. If anything happens to me, the evidence goes straight to the police." Nina's composure broke, then her voice rose, trembling with anger. "You think you're untouchable, old woman? You think—" "Enough," Eric snapped, slamming his hand on the table. His voice wasn't his usual timid tone. It was deep, furious, unfamiliar. "Get out," he told her, "now." "Eric, I said get out." She stood frozen, then grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. When it slammed shut behind her, the silence that followed was deafening. Eric turned to me, eyes red. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "No," I said gently, "but you still deserve a chance to change." He buried his face in his hands, shoulders shaking. And for the first time, I saw my son, not as the man who'd betrayed me, but as the boy who'd lost his way. I put my hand on his. "We'll fix this. Together. But from now on, Eric, truth isn't optional." He nodded silently, tears falling into the tablecloth. As the rain finally stopped outside, I felt something shift inside me, not victory, not relief, but clarity. The kind that comes when you stop trying to be safe and start trying to be free. The morning after that confrontation, the house felt different. Quiet, but not hollow, more like a room after a storm, when the air still hums with what's past, but the danger has moved on. I watched the sunlight crawl across the kitchen floor, the same spot where Nina had once stood smiling over a cup of coffee she meant to be my last. Now it was just me, alive, alert, and strangely at peace. 2 days later, Eric showed up again. He looked tired, humbled, carrying a small cardboard box. "I moved out," he said softly. "I couldn't stay with her. Not after everything." I nodded. "Good." He placed the box on the counter. "These are her things. Letters, receipts, photos. Maybe they'll help your lawyer." I opened the lid, and inside I found the last piece of the puzzle. A small notebook, hers this time, filled with half-written plans. "After payout, clear debt. Move to Arizona, new start. Eric will come around." Reading those words didn't bring satisfaction, just sorrow. How easily people convince themselves that their cruelty is necessity. I looked up at him. "You did the right thing walking away." He sighed. "It doesn't feel like it. I still loved her, you know." "I know," I said. "But love isn't meant to blind us. It's meant to open our eyes." He nodded slowly, tears pooling in his eyes. "I just wish I'd seen it sooner." "We all do," I said softly. "The trick is to not look away once you finally do." In the weeks that followed, I handed everything over to Mr. Sanderson. Nina was charged with attempted fraud and tampering with legal documents. They couldn't prove intent to poison not enough evidence, but they had enough to keep her away for a long time. Eric attended every hearing. He never once looked for excuses. He apologized to me in front of the court, voice trembling, hands shaking. It broke my heart and healed it at the same time. When it was all over, I didn't feel triumph, just stillness. A kind of sacred quiet that comes when you finally stop living in fear. One evening, months later, I sat on the porch watching the sunset, the same one I used to share with my husband. The wind moved through the trees like a soft whisper, and I thought of everything that had happened, the lies, the danger, the loss, and somehow, the growth. I realized something then. Survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about reclaiming your right to peace no matter who tried to take it from you. I pulled out my old black notebook for the record and wrote the final entry. Forgiveness isn't letting go of the past. It's letting go of its grip on you. I can't erase what was done, but I can refuse to let it define what comes next. Then, for the first time in months, I closed it not with fear, but with finality. A week later, Eric came by with coffee. Real coffee, the safe kind, from my favorite cafe downtown. He handed me the cup sheepishly. "Figured we could start over," I smiled. "No poison this time?" He laughed softly through his nose. "No, Mom, just almond milk." We sat together in the fading light, and for a moment it felt like the years before all this, before greed and fear had twisted what was good. He told me about his new job, small but honest work. He was learning, humbler now, slower to speak, quicker to listen. And when he left that night, he hugged me tighter than he had in years. That's when I knew redemption isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just showing up, one honest day at a time. Now, months later, I'm finally ready to share my story. Not to dwell on what happened, but to remind anyone listening that betrayal doesn't get the last word you do. Because sometimes the people closest to you will hand you a cup and smile, not knowing you can already taste the danger. Sometimes you'll have to protect yourself not with anger, but with wisdom. And sometimes you'll have to lose almost everything to find your voice again. But when you do, when you finally rise from that quiet wreckage, you realize something powerful. No one can destroy the woman who's learned how to save herself. I took a deep breath, looked straight into the camera, and said, "Wherever you're watching from, if someone has betrayed your trust, if you've been made to question your worth or your instincts, listen to me carefully. You are not crazy. You are not weak. You are simply waking up." Then I smiled softly, sincerely. That betrayal lit a fire in me I never thought I had, and it burned away every lie that tried to bury me,